Okay, so hello and welcome to today's Meet the BTP and Designing Out Crime webinar. First, we're going to hear from Jess Coleman, who's going to talk about her role and how members can work with the BTP and how to report all kinds of issues, including antisocial behaviour and violence and intimidation against women and girls. Then we're going to hear from Bastow about how we can design out crime in and around our stations. We've set aside about 30 minutes for Jess and Sean, so there'll be plenty of time at the end for answering questions for those joining us at this live event. You can post questions in the chat as we go along, or you can raise your hand later on. If we can't get through all the questions, we will take them away and respond directly at a later date. The recording of this webinar will be available through the Community Rail Network website and YouTube channel. You'll find these links in the Member Services section under Past Events Materials. So now I'm going to hand straight over to Jess.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Good afternoon all. As was said just before, my name is Jess Coleman and I'm a Community Engagement Specialist within BTP. It is a delight to be with you here this afternoon, so thank you so much for taking some time out and coming along to talk to myself and to Sean. Hopefully this will be a start of a partnership across the country and across the Community Rail Partnership and BTP. So I do have I've got one slide, so hold on to your hats for the anticipation. Ooh. Sorry, bear with, this is a user error. I hadn't pressed the share button and that tends to help. All right, here we go. So hopefully that's now on the screen. As I said before, I'm a community engagement specialist with BTP. I have worked in policing for about 12 years. That was after completing my master's in sociolinguistics. I can't speak any languages at all, but my specialism is just in how people communicate and how people connect with one another, which does very much play into my my role here in BTP. As it does say on the screen, my work encompasses everything from volunteering, youth programmes, work experience, cadets, on patrol, special constabulary and community events. And there is my email on the screen as well, so feel free to get in contact with anything at all. I'm more than happy to be flexible and see where I can support you and your needs, and particularly how I can support with you, your station, your rail partnership, your station adopters, whatever it is. I am here to see how BTP can help you create a more resilient and safer environment through that proactive social adoption and working together collaboratively to solve these problems. As Jenny said, of course, we are aware of some of the issues that we do all have at stations, including antisocial behaviour, including issues that may affect those kind of gender-based issues, which I'm aware we're here to talk about today. As always, report 61016, see it, say it's sorted. If we're not aware of the problems going on, then we can't allocate resource effectively. So my number one ask always is to ensure that the issues are reported and that you encourage others who've experienced these issues or any issues to report it as well. This is because it influences our patrol plans. So as I'm sure you're aware, the rail network is fairly big. So if we're not aware of the issues that you are specifically having at those stations, we can't adequately respond because we're not aware of it. And the only way that we become aware of it is by people informing us. So although I can't take crime reports, I can't take intel reports, it does all get fed in to our big information pot, for want of a better way of putting that, on a Tuesday afternoon. And it will be allocated correctly, whether that is going through to our more specialist teams, or whether it influences our patrol plans, or whether it influences our intel collection. It will be reviewed and actioned as appropriate. From my perspective, as I said before in my little introductory bit, I'm all about looking at social capital and social resilience. So we know that protected spaces, you may be aware of the broken window theory, which is if an area looks protected and it looks like it's taken care of, it is less likely to see opportunistic crime. In areas such as your own, I would love to see how BTP can connect with you guys about it, whether there is collaboration that we can do between our officers, our staff, to create those protected areas. If there is anything we can do, such as youth programs, if we can work looking at cadet units, etc. Whatever we can do to support, I'm happy to have those conversations with you. Oh, and I did have another point, but it's completely run out of my brain. I'm so sorry. Oh, I've completely forgot my last point. It's completely escaped the station, shall we say. There we go. Bringing back with a train pun. But as I was just saying during that little section, whatever I can help with, whatever I can support with, if you've got an idea, if you are running an event, there we go, it came back to me eventually. If you're running an event and you think, you know what, it'd be nice to have some uniform attendance, just for that connecting communities, those building bridges, those connecting the police force with the people that you see and the people you work with, the people you volunteer with, do get in touch. Our PCSOs would love to attend the events that you put on, but sometimes we're not aware of them. Equally, our special constabulary, and equally me, I'd love to come. Please invite me. And as I think I've hammered home the point a few times, if you have an idea, if you have a inkling of something that you'd like to put together but not sure where to start, I am more than happy to have those initial ideas about what we can do, how BTP can be built into those initial stages, and have a conversation. As I've mentioned before, social capital and social resilience and designing out problems through collaboration is absolutely key when it comes to our community resilience. When I refer to these things, by the way, social capital is the idea that the more that we can build together, the stronger our community will be, the more resilient it is, the more resilient communities are, the less likely they are affected by crime, by social health issues, by all that retinue of bad things that we don't want in communities. And what we can work together to do is work to remove them from our communities. So yeah, I am pretty much an open book. I'm hopefully going to have my information on the website soon. I am rubbish at replying to emails because I think Alice had actually contacted me a few times to get that on there, but hopefully we will have a more visible presence on the Community Rail Partnership our website imminently, but that involves me replying to an email. So as I think we've said at the end, I believe we'll be going over all the questions, but do jump at anything in there, and I will again share my inbox at the end as well. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh yes, I just saw one pop up. I cover everywhere, from the tippy top of Scotland all the way through to the bottom of Cornwall. It's me. So yeah, get in contact, and I'll always do my best to help.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jess, for that excellent whistle stop kind of all the amazing things you can do. I imagine there's going to be plenty more questions to come at the end. But for now, I'm going to hand straight over to Sean.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present today and give you an insight into what designing out crime is all about. I apologise in advance if I bore you to absolute tears with some of this stuff, but I think it is very relevant for stations. I think some of the work that we do, not just within BTP, but Home Office forces, kind of gets underrated and undervalued at times. And I think part of my role within BTP, which I'll talk to you about in a moment, has been to try and widen the horizons and make everybody externally aware of what designing out crime is and how actually the influence we can have at a very early stage of a design or even retrospectively can make such a big difference to feeling safe at a station and bringing that togetherness at a station. So I'm going to share my screen. I have got some slides to talk through to give you an understanding of what designing out crime is. So please bear with me one moment. I'll get the presentation up and then we'll go from there. Okie dokie. So if anybody can't see that, please let me know. Okay, I assume by the silence that you can all see it, so that's all good. So as Jenny kindly introduced me, I am Sean Bastow. I'm Designing Out Crime Officer for the British Transport Police. And I want to give you a bit more of an understanding of who I am and how I sort of fit into this conversation. I've been working for BTP since September 2023. I predominantly cover the Northwest region, places like Manchester, Liverpool, Cumbria, all the way up the west side of the Pennines up to the Carlisle, and a little bit far down into the Midlands as far as Stone. And I've not put it on there, but I do cover the North Wales coast as well. So I've actually got quite a huge geographical area which I cover for stations. I'm a qualified crime prevention specialist. I hold the level 5 ProQual diploma in crime prevention, designing out crime. It's a national qualification. It was only ever recognised within policing for many years. Until about 4 years ago, when they actually nationalised the qualification, got it accredited outside of policing. So it is something now that can be studied by, well, anybody essentially, and you can study for designing out crime at level 4s and level 5 qualifications. I also hold a degree in criminology. And obviously, I have been in policing for quite some time now. This is I think my 11th year in policing, 8 years with Greater Manchester Police as a designing out crime officer, advising on developments, regeneration schemes, and community safety improvements. Undertaking projects such as the Places of Worship Home Office funding scheme, which was based upon issues of hate crime within that particular force. And I've also been involved with local planning authorities for nearly 8 years as well with Greater Manchester Police. There's 10 across Greater Manchester. I liaise with all 10 local authorities dealing with different developments, change of uses, the inclusions of small things like BT links in city centres, just anything and everything I did at Greater Manchester Police before I moved to the railway industry in BTP. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is what is designing out crime. You're probably wondering what designing out crime actually is. This is only a whistle-stop tour of designing out crime, because if we go real theoretical into this, I think you really would be bored to tears. So it's preventing crime through the design of buildings, streets, and public spaces. And it actually uses evidence-based principles like natural surveillance, access control, and clear ownership. It creates safer, more secure environments that reduce opportunities for crime and antisocial behaviour. Now, I mentioned it earlier, I alluded to it a little bit earlier about it being embedded early in the process. And one of the key successes of this particular role, and what I find to be something I am pushing really hard for all the time in this role, is to get embedded within all of the local planning authorities, but also with project managers, developers, people within the train operating companies, because not everybody is aware of what designing out crime is. And as I said, how early intervention can have a massive impact on the lifespan of a development. And it gives us the opportunity to influence the layouts, the landscaping, the lighting, and the features of the buildings that they're putting into place. But most importantly, it supports that long-term community safety. And from a policing perspective, it actually reduces demand. And it is proven there are case studies out there for housing estates, for developments across the country where, when using the principles of designing out crime and crime prevention through environmental design, it actually can reduce crime quite a lot. So what is the role of a designing out crime officer? What do we actually do? Well, I kind of think I've covered some of this already. We do reduce crime through advising on safe layout, lighting, access and surveillance in new and existing developments. I find a lot of the work that I undertake is retrospective. I'm kind of dealing with issues that are historical, that have probably been there for the dawn of time, especially particular stations when they've been there so long, way before my time on this planet. And I'm going there and I'm looking at these developments and I'm looking at ways in which I can potentially have an impact on the environment around it. We look at planning applications, we provide that guidance, and we use something called secured by design principles, which secured by design is a police accreditation scheme, which is run by police CPI. We also carry out crime risk assessments using local data and intelligence. And just going back to what Jess was saying a little bit earlier, reporting, that really heavily focuses on how we're able to influence certain elements of design. When we're working with project managers and people that have got budgets for developments, we are looking to provide crime statistics and crime information to be able to find out exactly what types of crimes are taking place in that local area, and not just the area of the site, but the area surrounding it. Because just because it might not be on the site itself, it doesn't mean necessarily that the issues that are community-wide based around the area might not bleed into that area later down the line. So when Jess said about reporting, it's so important, really important. And obviously there's going to be this perception from the general public that we've all felt at some point during our lifespan that, you report something and nothing happens. That's not necessarily true. Like behind the scenes, all of this reporting gets fed into that intelligence hub that Jess was alluding to earlier. And that information then forms part of what we call a problem-solving plan. That problem-solving plan that gets put into place with the train operating companies. It gets put into place with the necessary people like me who feature into the equation, and also obviously the local neighbourhoods officers as well. And that is able to form part of how we then can strategically start planning a way of dealing with these issues, from not just a one-pronged attack, but from different angles. We also work with architects, planners, developers, local partners to embed safety early in the design process. And again, I repeat it, it improves long-term community safety and reduces policing demand through preventative design solutions. So, what is the Designing Out Crime Unit? What does it look like in the British Transport Police? We are now part of the Network Policing team, which is what Jess's team sits under. We have a Designing Out Crime team manager, and across the country we have 8 Designing Out Crime officers based in Glasgow, myself in Manchester, Leeds, Lincoln, Birmingham, Cardiff, Southampton. We also have a few in London as well. We have 2 in London that cover that area, and all of us are level 5 Designing Out Crime accredited. We have a Designing Out Crime coordinator, so any requests that get put through to the team then get filtered down by the coordinator. And we also have a safeguarding on rail scheme manager, which features as part of the wider team as well. So what is the type of work that we do? This list here gives you a bit of an inclination of what we actually do, and I'll talk you through a little bit into how that works for us. So station builds and rebuilds. For me, that's the bread and butter of what we actually do. If
Someone's at the front
my
door
apologies, someone's at the front door doorbell. So what we do with station builds and rebuilds, we look at the plans when they come into us. They give us the opportunity to look at the way these things are designed. Is there a possibility that some of these areas that are on this design, are they going to create potential issues? Are there going to be isolated areas within this design that we need to look at? That's why it's so important that we need to be involved at such an early stage. But it also is the same for redevelopments and rebuilds as well, because sometimes we get places like Preston that needs a new roof, or we get potential redevelopments of stations across the country that have new infrastructures being built. And as a result of that happening, sometimes we don't get consulted on that. And that can be a problem, because if we don't get consulted, then we're having to deal with that retrospectively. So we're really heavily focused on trying to push the narrative out there about what we actually do, so that people understand they should be contacting us at a very early stage of either the design of a new station or the redevelopment of a station, to allow us the opportunity to actually provide commentary and security measures that could help the environment around during the course of the lifespan of that particular station. One of the big pieces of work that I'm involved in, which was a real eye-opener to me joining BTP from Greater Manchester Police, was the work around suicide prevention. So suicide prevention is not something I ever thought about with the railway network. I was really, really blind to the fact that this actually went on until I joined British Transport Police. Now I'm heavily involved in what forms part of the prevention with Network Rail and within BTP. So whenever that happens on the network, when a suicide takes place, an incident takes place, we're asked as a designing out crime officer to attend collaboratively with Network Rail's suicide prevention lead and with our fatality investigator to undertake a post-incident site visit. That involves us going out and looking at the station itself, whether the incident was arising because of the fact that there were maybe physical preventative measures that are not installed or need to be installed at the site. That's something that I for me personally, it's quite an emotionally invested piece of work because having had a family member have taken their own life in the past, it kind of hits home for me massively. But then I also feel like it's a huge piece of work in the sense of that I can help in some very subtle way design something out or have something physically installed at a site that may prevent that from happening to somebody else's family and to some individuals again. Then it's a huge piece of work for me to be involved in. And unfortunately, it happens more often than you think. Safeguarding is another one. People in precarious positions, people that obviously are having mental health episodes, may put themselves in those positions. And it's my job to go out and look at these particular areas again. And if there's anything I can recommend to design that out from stopping those individuals from being in those precarious positions, then that's another big piece of work that I'm undertaking as well. We do undertake high security and terrorism threats as well. We are involved with our counter-terrorism team and we liaise with them on much larger projects. The disruption team that we work with, BTP have their own regional disruption teams. I work with the Northwest one. And then we also are involved in volume crime, things like cycle theft, motor vehicle theft, cable metal, theft of personal property, graffiti, and of course, VOG as well. Network Rail land disposals. Network Rail obviously sell pieces of land off now and again, with the view to it maybe being developed into something much larger, like a block of flats, for example. And that's something we're also consulted with Network Rail with, which is great because then we get the opportunity to actually comment on these things, before they actually go through that process. And if there is a potential that there is going to be a block of flats or a small residential estate next to the railway line, that we're embedded in that process to have that conversation at that stage so we can help provide the necessary recommendations to support that process. And I've mentioned it a few times, planning. We are involved in the planning world, not so much within BTP though as what I was in GMP. That's something I am really pushing hard for to get us involved with the local planning authorities and making them aware that the Home Office forces have designing out crime officers that are usually statutory consultees to the planning process, but BTP are not and don't necessarily get the opportunity to comment on certain applications. So part of my role since I've been in post is to sort of really push that out there and make them aware that, we do exist. BTP do have designing out crime officers that would like to be involved in the process and would hopefully be able to provide some of that valuable input when they look to potentially put an application through. And accreditations, I mentioned one earlier, the Secure by Design accreditation. That at the bottom of the list really applies mainly to commercial developments, to residential developments. There's not really much that goes on relating to Secure by Design and the railway network. But what does go on the railway network is that we've got the Safer Tram Stops Award, we've got the Safeguarding on Rail scheme. We have got the Secure Stations scheme and the Safer Parking Award, both of which are actually being merged into one, which is going to be rolled out very, very soon, which will cover both the parking element of stations and the stations themselves. But in my time at BTP, when I've done the Safer Parking Award, I've specifically looked at stations to make sure that they meet a certain threshold for the security and for the level of crime as well. And that applies to secure stations as well. It's making sure that the stations have got the appropriate physical security measures in place at them before we're then able to sign them off and say that they can be accredited with a Secure Stations Award. But as I say, that will be changing very, very shortly into one particular award, the Safer Railway Scheme. So that will be something that we'll be doing going forward in 2026. So what you're probably wondering is how we can work together. Like this is something that I racked my brains with a few months ago when I did this presentation for the first time for Community Rail Cumbria. I thought, what can I do with Community Rail? What can we actually influence? Well, there's actually a lot. There's a lot more than what I thought there was initially. We can actually collaborate on station improvements. You guys that adopt the stations or part of the station networks, you are the eyes and ears on the ground. You are at these stations or take pride in these stations and are there more often than not. We can actually work together to design safer, more welcoming stations throughout the layout, through the lighting, through the signage, through the environmental changes. Importantly, sharing local knowledge and community insights. I said it earlier, you guys provide valuable information on community concerns, on vulnerable locations, and how passengers are actually using this space. We've had issues in certain areas of the country which, unless we're made aware of them, is really difficult for us to come out and actually do something about unless we're having these types of conversations. And I can use Community Rail Cumbria as a great example. They've had some issues at particular stations in that area of the world where they wasn't aware of work that was actually going on within BTP. And that perception always is that, if you don't hear anything from the police, nothing's actually happening. Well, that perception was changed following a series of meeting with Community Rail Cumbria once they knew that actually the local neighbourhoods team were undertaking work. I had also been undertaking work at a couple of those particular stations regarding physical security recommendations for the train operating companies to implement. So having that joint problem solving working for crime and antisocial behaviour and coordinating those responses to issues such as trespass, vandalism, theft, and ASB, using those prevention-focused design solutions, it massively helps. I can honestly say, since I've started working alongside Community Rail, it's been really refreshing and it has really helped open, again, my eyes to be able to see how we can actually work together. Engaging obviously communities in those safety initiatives, working together on campaigns. I went to one in Carlisle about a month or so ago, and we did a stand there and we did an impromptu talk there for the station adopters, and it was really positive and really good because, again, not a lot of people know what this Designing Out Crime team do within BTP or Home Office forces, and we're more than happy to actually come out to these events and engage with people and have these types of conversations that I'm presenting to you now, because I do believe that the more that happens and the more collaborative working gets done, the more likely we are to be successful in trying to reduce the issues that we're seeing at certain stations. And again, it's about creating long-term sustainable safety improvements to these stations. It's looking at these crime prevention measures, looking at ongoing maintenance, regeneration, and these community-led projects that go on all the time that we all need to be a part of together, and something that we can really work on to get these issues eradicated as best possible. So I hope I haven't bored you to tears. On the screen is my name, email address, and my telephone number, and also the Designing Out Crime's main inbox number. Now, I would recommend that if you are aware of any particular issues at certain stations, like Jess said, we're not essentially officers that we can report every single thing into, but if there is a historic antisocial behaviour going on at stations, it might be that I might not be able to be the person that can resolve the issue immediately, but it might be that I'm the conduit between yourselves and the train operating company who we have great relationships with, who I can actually go to see what they're actually doing about these things and or what they can do about these things, or how I can be involved in helping design some of this stuff out. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to ask you, have you got any questions?
Hi, thank you so much, Sean, and thanks again, Jess. That was super interesting. I personally already buzzing with thoughts about how this could work, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out some of the questions. Barbara, if you don't mind, I'll do the ones that are in the chat first, and then I will come to the questions on the screen, if that's okay. So the first question we've got in the chat is from Katie Douglas, who's at Community Rail Lancashire. how can we find out about what stations could do what stations could do? I think it means which stations could do with some extra love. So do you have a list? Is that information available? Is that what you meant, Katie? You feel free to speak if I'm not quite.
Yeah, that's what. Is it publicly available? Do we just sort of badger Sean every now and again for like where they are?
I can't honestly say like there is a specific list out there where it says which stations need love. Like there's that many stations across my patch, for example. Like a lot of these things are brought to me directly, or brought via my coordinator on the team. Like for example, the ASB up in Maryport, that was prolific for Community Rail Cumbria, and as soon as that was brought to my attention, I was able to go and have an impact on that by creating a report with recommendations, which wasn't just recommendations for the train operating company, it was recommendations for BTP officers as well, based in the locations where they need to be strategically going out at certain times to actually deal with these issues. So there isn't a particular list, Katie, that I can share, but what I will say is, if in your particular area there are stations that yourself or your colleagues are aware of that may need some support with, then obviously get in touch 100%. And obviously, if it's anything that we can do to support, then I'm more than happy to do it. Or if I can't directly do anything about it, if it's more of a policing issue, I can certainly get you to the right people.
Can I echo that as well? Like if there is, if it's more of a police issue, then we can recommend who to talk to, like the neighbourhood teams, etc. And if it is more of a community issue, or if we need some like diversionary tactics, so if it is for young people, Sean can also add into his reports about actions for community and what BTP can do to support in those aspects, like what we have done for Community Rail Cumbria. So again, feel free to reach out and we can always have those discussions.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next one, Katie again. Community rail partnerships are well placed to support community consultation and, dare I say, co-production to build in early community input into design. How can community rail put itself into those conversations? I think we're talking about, especially stuff which is around planning and the early stage interventions that we are very well connected then, or community rail partnerships are. How could community rail get more closely involved in that?
Again, I think that's the same problem like we're having at BTP, if I'm being totally honest with you. That's, the difference I had from moving from Greater Manchester Police was that we, at Greater Manchester Police, we were made statutory consultees on a threshold of planning applications. So no matter what the planning application was or type of it was, we were then consulted, and the planning officers would then come to us directly and they would say, have you got any comments on this planning application? That, since I've joined BTP and on the rail network, I've found that that's something that doesn't happen a lot. And this is the same kind of challenge that I face on a daily basis, is we need to be embedded. And I think the only way to do that is really being in touch with the local planning officers and asking for that conversation to happen where, is there a possibility we can be made statutory consultees, or are there particular projects, high profile projects that could be part of the railway network or affect the railway network, which, we could be made for commentary on. And I think it's the same for yourselves at Community Rail. I think that needs to happen as well, because again, going back to conversations I've had in the past few weeks, I met with Stephen from the Friends of Eccles, and one of the issues we was having there is there's no planning permissions in place for the delivery lockers now. You probably see them popping up everywhere at stations. There's no planning permissions in place for that. They don't have to go through the local planning authorities to actually just put them in place. And that's a problem because they're now just popping up in different locations without conversations happening. And it's not even just the fact that they're putting them in different locations, it's the where they're orientating them as well. It's where they're just literally dumping them in a really obscure part of the station, which is then potentially creating a crime generator. I've had one which has been brought to my attention for a station where they've put it in, and they put it in a way in which it's created a little corner area, an isolated spot which doesn't have any coverage over, which now people are using as a toilet and people are using for drug misuse. And if that conversation would have just happened before they put it in, we could have said to them, look, maybe it's not the best place here because you're going to create this potential hiding spot or isolated area. Maybe you should think about the surveillance around here. And that's the challenge we face, unless we're embedded into that conversation, it's very, very difficult. We're then having to deal with things retrospectively. So for that example I've just given you, I've got to go back now and have that conversation and say, actually, you've done this. I know you didn't need planning permission, but now there's a problem because now it's creating these issues, which may lead to police intervention down the line, which then creates demand on the force, which then takes that resource that could be used in a different location for something more genuinely important. It puts it into that, and it's obviously having to get us embedded into the right places. So I couldn't give you an answer as to what the best way is to get embedded into the local planning authorities. But if you've got contacts within the LPAs, what I would say is to use those contacts and ask those questions to them. And if they're not the right people, ask them to put you in touch with the right people and see if they can be embedded into that, because that's the only way, unless they make us statutory consultees.
Thank you. So I guess it's a two-way opportunity, isn't it? It's for community rail people to be saying, have you consulted the BTP on this? And vice versa for BTP saying, have you spoken to the community rail partnerships, the adopters, to make sure all that good information is fed in as early as possible. Okay, I'm going to go to you now, Barbara, and then I'll come back to the chat.
Okay, I think you can hear me, can't you?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Sean. This is so informative for us. The information you're giving us is just going to take us forward. It was more of a statement than anything else that yesterday we had station adopter, by the way, with a small unstaffed station. We had in excess of 200 people come on our open day yesterday. We do an annual one. Sometimes we do it twice a year. Never gave it a thought about having a BTP officer with a stand, but it's such a good idea. Really is a good idea. Who would I talk to if we have another one? Because we're always doing something. Is it the number you've given us? Oh, sorry, the design.
No, that would be me. So
That'll
that would
be
be
you.
volunteers. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So anything to do with proactive, positive engagement, community engagement, building more community connection. Me.
Right.
So that would be volunteers at btp.police.uk.
Okay, that's good to know. Because we're having another one shortly, but it won't be but it won't be so many people. It's just going to be a small one. But also, we've just restored a waiting room, platform waiting room, and once again, didn't think about asking BTP to come and have a look and see if there's anything we could do that would prevent some damage, because it's unstaffed. The platform waiting room, it looks fantastic. But it is a bit scary worrying about if something happens. So really, that's all I had to say. But I'm finding this quite interesting. Thank you.
I'll just respond to that, Barbara. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's about being made aware and educated on what there is out there. In typical policing terms, you just kind of think of people out there on the beat doing what they're doing, and you don't realise that there actually are specialist roles within forces like this. And like I say, this is something I've been doing for nearly 11 years. I'm still just as enthusiastic about it as I was when I first started, and I do believe it makes a difference. And I know there's a question in the chat, I think it's from Katie, a bit earlier, about links to research that demonstrates the impacts of designing out crime. I'm going to answer that as well and say yes, there are, and I can certainly get you some of those. There's Dr. Leanne Monchuk from the University of Huddersfield. She does a lot of case studies. They're more so around residential areas than anything, so they might not be relevant for the railway, but the premise of what we do is still the same. And I think for you to see how that's had an impact on residential estates might give you an inkling of how it can be transferred over to somewhere like the railway network, and that's kind of, for me personally, that's been the beauty of having that experience first from GMP to come into the railway network. Was I was already well embedded within this world before I came over, so it was a case of looking at the world in a different view and looking at the stations in the same way, that I was looking at residential estates and big developments like the Co-op Live in Manchester. And whilst these environments are massively different in different ways, the principles are the same, and you can apply them to different projects no matter how big or small. So yeah, going back to sort of what you were saying there, Barbara, events wise, as a DOCO, I'd be more than happy to come to events, if I can support people. Like we said, the one at Cumbria was up in Carlisle was a good success. And obviously, like Jess said, she can help with the volunteer side, and it'd be really good to sort of join all that up.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm going to sneak in with my own question before I come back to Elaine and the others. When you mentioned housing estates, do you do, as well as advising on, I'll come back, Jess, was it on the last point? Did you want to jump in?
I meant, sorry. If I can very quickly, there are some also key terminologies that you can Google with regards to some of the research that looks at how people protected spaces works. Capable guardianship is one, broken window theory, which I did sort of allude to, and community resilience and capacity building, so social capital. Sorry, I'm going to mute myself now.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. So I jumped in too soon. So yeah, my question was, as well as train stations themselves, then, are you able to give advice on, if not full sort of last mile journeys, the wider area, like, station approaches, how people get in and out? So not just the station itself, but that wider area. And then around that, does that mean you're also consulted, or should be consulting or consulted around things like LC WIPs, which is local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, which are usually the things which are looking at how people are walking, cycling and traveling between key areas? Yeah, so can you advise on it, and are you working with wider partners on that as well?
Yes, we do. We do station approaches. That usually, for anything that kind of falls part of the BTP's jurisdiction, is essentially what we're consulted on. But I give you again an example I can use. I was in a meeting last week about Carlisle Station, and it was a multi-agency meeting. The Cumbria Police DOCO was in that. Myself, Cumbria Council was involved in that. And that's the type of multi-agency approach that we need. So to answer the question, yes, we are involved, but I do feel it only sort of seems to be when they, like, the local authorities know that they've got to consult with us, as opposed to actually viewing us as someone they should be coming to straight away. And sometimes there are projects that don't necessarily cross my path. And then again, like I say, it's retrospective issues that we're dealing with, and this is so important to really sort of champion the idea of early intervention, because they could consult with us on these things early, and we could give them advice, and it could really lead to the potential reduction in crime or prevention of crime happening. So yeah, to answer your question, Jenny, we do get involved, and I personally, myself and my colleagues, are pushing hard to make sure that the local planning authorities are aware of what we do in BTP, and that we are available to have these conversations. And I am finding, slowly but surely, I am getting more contacts from people within the industry and within Network Rail and the different train operating companies, and that's good, but it's just not quite where I want it to be yet.
Okay, thank you. So I'm turning my camera off because my connection seems a bit shaky. Thank you. That's really interesting. So I think that's a good opportunity for anyone in community rail who's looking at the wider area and station approaches to get in touch with you and get some advice on what good looks like. Okay, so back to everyone else's questions. Thank you for allowing me to jump in. Elaine, did you want to ask your question maybe about the VORG strategies? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Thank you, Jenny. And thank you very much, Sean and Jess. Really interesting presentations and great to kind of see behind the curtain, so to speak, and learn a bit more about the amazing work both of you are doing. My question was with regards to VOG. I'm mindful there's been so much to discuss this morning. It's difficult to just focus on one piece of that puzzle, but I was curious around the classification of volume crimes. So a bit of curiosity there on why VOG falls within that category and perhaps not a safeguarding category, and also general curiosity on how approaches to different types of volume crimes might vary depending on how often those are taking place and the sort of severity and risk to community members.
Jess, do you want me to jump in and just have sort of my perspective on it first?
That'd be grand, thank you.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it doesn't no longer feature part of volume crime. That is something that really I can take out of the presentation and put that independently as its own. What's happened only very recently, and when I say recently, I mean literally about in the last 6 weeks, there's been a sort of change within BTP. This happens obviously within policing every so often. There's a restructure, there's a reset of how resources are going to be moved around the force and what the strategic goals are. Obviously VOG's right up on the top of the list now for BTP. So as a result of some of them changes, what the team that are dealing with VOG are actually doing is getting their own independent designing out crime officer in, which is solely going to be working on VOG, which I think is really important, because you obviously you rightly pointed out about the volume crime and you know how strategically forces will only tend to really look at what's the hot priority and the hot take at the moment with regard to crime. VOG is something that they're not treating that way. They're actually treating it quite independently from volume crime. Hence the reason why they've now obviously got funding to have an independent DOCO doing that on that team. That'll be tasked by someone specifically working within safeguarding and VOG. So as soon as we get somebody in, essentially they will be that single point of contact for designing out crime when it comes down to VOG. And one of the things I was talking to Jess about this morning, although it doesn't necessarily relate to the railway network itself, there are obviously other courses that I've been on in the last couple of years, which I found really beneficial, more so for sort of home office forces, designing out crime officers. There was one that I did around safer parks, which was really eye-opening and I thought was a really good presentation. And I felt like, you know, that's something that the narrative needs to be pushed out there more, because there's such an education that needs to be given around that. And I think, you know, that's something I would say for anybody in this group that might be interested in that, go and have a look at safer parks. I should be able to drop the link in the chat to that as well, with regards to that. But you know, that actually involves like local home office designing out crime officers, unless it falls under sort of the railway network or close to the railway network, then I'd be personally involved. I hope that answers your question. In summary, what I'm trying to say is it's not part of volume crime. VOG is being treated independently and more with more severity and more seriousness within BTP, and that's why they've got designing out crime officer coming in to deal with that separately.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sean. That definitely answers my question and is really encouraging to hear. And just as a kind of final point for me on that, I think I probably speak for a lot of the CRPs in the room when I say when that new officer dedicated fully to VOG comes into place in BTP, I'd be really interested in connecting with them. And if you are able to facilitate an introduction via CRN, that would be fantastic to pick up with them, because we're doing a lot of work and I know other CRPs are as well in that area.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I'm going to be here to do. I'll help be the conduit to get that going.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I got that news just earlier on, Elena. Yeah, it's really exciting to know that there's going to be a dedicated person, because as you say, there's a lot of similarities and crossover, but it's not the same thing, is it? So this is great to hear. A couple more questions in the chat. How do we find out who is our Sean? Jess, I guess that's one for you. Is it to come to you and find out who the local person is?
Yeah, absolutely. If we channel that into our inbox, we'll be able to then reach out to that side of the team and ask them to get in touch.
Brilliant, thank you. Which other partners, this is from Jane, who is an adopter at Hilsey Station down near me. Which other partners should we involve alongside the BTP Designing Out Crime team? Who else would you recommend getting involved?
I'd always recommend inviting my team, which is the Citizens and Policing team. So Sean and I did mention this, and I probably should have mentioned, but I do keep forgetting. We are now part of the same team under the Network Policing support umbrella. So you've got me and my member of staff, and then Sean and the whole team over on the other side. So we're cousins now, I suppose, in a organisational sense. So yes, feel free to invite us. We will reach out to the local neighbourhood team, local PCSOs, the local special constabulary to build those local connections. We'd be more than happy to attend. As I did mention very briefly in my little overview, we do a lot of work with young persons. So we'd be more than happy to help I'll talk to anybody, as I'm sure that's coming across. So feel free to invite us, and then we will reach out to local teams to see if we can get along. And I'll probably try and come along because I love being outside. I'm not an officey person.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so with 5 minutes to spare, I guess we've got time for one or maybe even two quick questions. Is there anyone else? I can't see anyone else with their hands up, but I'm not sure. Maybe shout. Okay, Barbara again. Off you go.
It's me. Can I just make a suggestion? But it's kind of a different suggestion, that on the backs of seats of trains or anywhere, it's just bombarded with the telephone number 61016. Because I've been on several trains recently, and you've got to look around. Yes, it's on the overhead that you get where your directional overhead one is. But when you start looking around, and if I put myself in somebody's position, I'd sit and I go, what's the number? I don't know what the number is. You know, not everybody would have it on their phone. And I just think stickers everywhere on every train would help other people if they really needed to connect with the police.
It's that nudge messaging, isn't it? Because people might not be aware, and in that moment, they might forget what it is. Absolutely. We do try and get it out there as much as possible, but again, limitations sometimes. But yeah, absolutely. Love the idea of stickers. I just hope that the Tocs wouldn't be too upset with us putting stickers on things.
It's a really good idea. I think the amount of people who don't know what it is, even if they've just got off a train, is unbelievable. Jane, another question.
I just wanted to say thank you, Jenny, for organising this, because it's ticking so many of the boxes we've got going on at Hilsey at the moment. It's another unmanned station, top of the city in Portsmouth. We adopted it last year, so we're already picking up potential areas that need support and need fixing, but we're going to lease the building to renovate it, so that would be great to get your support with that, because that flags up another security risk, doesn't it, if you then open a building. We've got the footpaths. We're meeting with the council this week, but it'd be great if that's something you could get involved with, because we've got women's safety has been flagged up, just getting onto the platforms, and graffiti, obviously. But we also really sadly had our first suicide at the weekend, so it's been a bit of a traumatic weekend to actually see the aftermath of that accidentally, because I arrived at the wrong time to do some planting. But so there's lots of things we'd love you to come down and get involved and actually look at improvements for the station.
So I've just popped in again. I know I had it on my presentation, but I've just popped in the email address for our inbox just because that'll be covered by a specific DOCO. Not me particularly, I don't think on this occasion, but it'll be one of my colleagues. And when it goes to that inbox, if you can again put a synopsis of any sort of rising trends and issues in there, or any, you know, the inclusion of any new buildings being opened, it's certainly something my counterpart down that area would be able to deal with. Again, I think it's really important that we you know we get these conversations going, because if we don't necessarily know about it, you know, it's incredibly difficult for us then to be able to actually have any influence over it. And because we have that relationship with the train operating companies, and we have close relationships with pretty much all of them, you know, we have contacts there that we can go to. Like I'll give you again, I love these examples today, but I'll give you another quick example. I was at Eccles the other week with Stephen from the Friends of Eccles, and he was talking to me about the cameras, and there was a question that I couldn't answer. I literally got on the phone, rang my contact up at Northern and said, David, can you just explain to me exactly what these cameras are picking up? And he was able to articulate that to me, and I was able to then pass that straight on to Stephen on site. And, you know, even sometimes if it is just little things like that that we might not be able to directly answer, but we can go and get the answers for you, I also find that that's really comforting, because then we all know that something is going on, or, you know, there are plans in the pipeline for things, or there are actually measures being put into place, like travel safe officers being deployed by the train operating companies. Even just little things like that, I think, provide that little bit of reassurance to us all that things are taking place.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to meeting you, actually, or not you personally, but yeah.
The other you. Barbara, did you have one quick comment, or is that an old hand? Sorry. Okay. No. Okay. That's not Barbara. That's probably about right, because it is 12:59. Loads of good questions. Thank you so much again, Sean and Jess. This has been really, really enlightening and quite encouraging, I'm sure, for a lot of our members. It's just been absolutely fantastic. I will resend your contact details to people on the call, but as you know, the recordings of this video will be found on our website, and do have a look also on our website for details of future events and training and networking opportunities, and sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already, of course. There is also a link in the chat for a bit of feedback, so if I can encourage everyone to fill that in. And of course, then when the new Vorg lead comes along, we will certainly connect and bring that connection forward to everybody in CRN. It's really exciting. So 1 o'clock, time to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you again, Sean and Jess.
Thanks,
and
guys.
I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
See you
Take
later.
care.
Bye.
Bye.